Sports betting reality equals or exceeds the hype, and March Madness Hoosier Hysteria style. Hello and welcome to AAi, the podcast on analytics and sports. I'm the resident Hoosier here, Phil in Los Angeles. Joining me are the AA. It's Andrew in San Diego. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Ari.
And Ari, who is just on the other side of the state line in Chicago, the Chicagoland area. We'll call him an honorary Hoosier for the purposes of this. We'll get to March Madness throughout the Hoosier heartland in a little while, but right now we have the big kid on the block. That's the state of New Jersey in sports betting, and the new kid on the block who's doing just fine, the state of Tennessee. Andrew and Ari, we really can't properly sum up how each week, each month, sports betting right now is a booming business. Andrew, take it away.
Yeah, this is just insane. We've been talking about New Jersey now for several months. Every month they release their numbers and it seems to be going up. And in fact, October is no different. They had their third straight record month with $803 million bet on sports. That's almost 65% more than was bet in the same month last year. This is the first time any state has seen more than 800 million in a single month. So this is just amazing what's been going on. Just to remind you, in August it was just over 650 million and almost 750 million in September. And some of that we thought was there's just so much sports going on in that really compact period. But October was largely a normal month from the amount of events. So to see it continue to go up like that is really amazing. And then not surprisingly, this is being driven online. Almost 93% of the bets were being placed online. And, it's doing well for both the operators in the state with almost 60 million in revenue for the operators and almost 7.5 million in taxes generated for the state just in 1 month. So that's working out really well for New Jersey. I'd expect when you see numbers like that, every other state legislator in the country is going to be looking at that and drooling, wondering how they can get some of that. And then we've been talking about New Jersey, but we should also talk about Illinois for Ari, because they've started out in what's the fastest start in the history of legal sports betting in the United States. They generated $305 million in September, and becoming the fourth state to surpass that $300 million in a single month. And they haven't yet reported October results, but they should be even more robust based on what we're seeing from other states.
One of the things that's it's hard to take a step back because this is what we talk about regularly. We've been just incredibly surprised by all this, and we've researched, and of course that plays to your strength, Andrew. Yeah, and we're going to go through some others, but there's an elephant in the room, something that's missing here. Nothing about the state of Nevada or Las Vegas, and that leads us into some other October figures.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was a really good month. Las Vegas is clearly hurting. We've talked about it. It's way down. And if people aren't going physically, they're not going to be betting in Vegas. But other states where they are betting, Indiana saw $230 million bet. Iowa saw over 80 million. Michigan over 45 million. West Virginia almost 45 million. And Washington, D.C., 4 million, which is amazing for the size they are. And then we're seeing it everywhere else. In the first week of online betting in Tennessee saw $27 million in betting. This gave a gross revenue of over $2 million for a week, and generated $500,000 in tax revenue. In the first week, they allowed legal online sports betting. And I think, Phil, to your point, this does raise the question of, this is great for these states, and clearly people want to bet. What happens when people can travel again? What happens as travel gets back to normal? Do we see a rebound in Vegas, or do people discover they really like this online sports betting and never go back to the physical casinos. It's going to be really interesting to watch play out over the next couple of years.
Will we get to travel again? I want to see the odds on that.
Now, I have to believe for my own sanity that we will get to travel again.
Ari, you live in Chicago, and just north of O'Hare is a casino that's really carrying the load for the state. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, that as Andrew said, these monthly figures are impressive, and I'm sure they're stable if not going up. But the Out Rivers Casino is right near O'Hare, has wonderful restaurants, Hugo's Frog Bar. I checked on the website beforehand. It is open, which is always interesting to see. But the appetite for this, before then you didn't even have to go that far. Like Aurora and Joliet had gaming as well. But yeah, it's really impressive to see all of this pick up. And then when you mentioned Hoosier earlier on, I was going to say I could see Indiana from the roof of my house. And I know other people said that about Alaska, but in reality, yeah, you can see it. You can see some of the smokestacks. It's about 30-minute drive.
And Phil, I want to ask one political question. Forgive me. It's a California political question, because before all of this broke, California was talking about sports betting, right? And our legislators shut it down, largely due to pressure from the tribal casinos. And now it wasn't shut down because the tribal casinos don't want sports betting. It was shut down because the tribal casinos want sports betting, right? But do you think the legislature in California is unhappy with that decision, seeing the amount of money that's flowing in states that are significantly smaller than California?
You guys want my you really want my answer? I suspect the people who receive those donations are very pleased, and the ones who did not are furious, and they should be. But California is the virtuous state of all 50. It's the most virtuous. So sports betting here is just not part of the California lifestyle.
No, there is no illegal betting happening on sports in California. You're absolutely right.
We're a very conservative, virtuous, place. So California, that would never work here. All right. That would be under the heading of fantasy, kind of like a movie here. All right, now guys, this is the good stuff. NCAA announcing it's going to do some form of March Madness in the bubble of Central Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a Hoosier. I'm an Indianapolis native. Grew up in Southport, right across the street, Banter Road from Southport High School, 7,000-foot gym, go Cards. The gym may end up hosting some games. I'll try to explain all this stuff because what's really happening there, guys, is extraordinary. Both in the NCAA headquarters located in Indianapolis. Indianapolis does a good job of this, and I think they may well find a very favorable government working with them because of all the revenue this would generate. So Indianapolis was supposed to host the Final Four championships anyway at Lucas Oil Stadium. That's the Colts stadium. But other gyms that they could host the 64-team tournament would include, Bankers Life. That's where the Pacers play, and that's a phenomenal place to watch a basketball game. Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is over Ari's shoulder. Hinkle is for Tony Hinkle, who was who coached all kinds of sports at Butler University. That's also the big gym used for Hoosiers, the movie. We'll talk about that in a minute. Been to Hinkle a lot. Love that. The original home of the Indiana State High School basketball tournament. But there are other gyms too. There's Farmers Coliseum, which is at the state fairgrounds. Minor league hockey teams plays there. That was the original Pacers home floor. There's University of Indianapolis called the Barn and Marian University. They're smaller colleges, about 4,000, 3,000, and they could play games or practices there. But Southport Fieldhouse, the largest high school gym in the metropolitan Indianapolis area, about 7,000 people. go-karts again. And here, Andrew, you both have lived in Southern California. If you really want to drive an hour, not like you do in Southern California, where an hour is about 20 miles, but if you want to drive an hour or just over an hour, also in the area are, all right, Indiana University in Bloomington, Purdue and West Lafayette, Ball State and Muncie, go-karts, I'm a Ball State card, and Indiana State University in Terre Haute, all within just over an hour drive or just under. So, and if you guys, you've probably heard this, I'm going to geek out a little bit with you. 17 high school venues in Indiana today boast a capacity of over 6,004 fans, and the largest is Newcastle Fieldhouse, about 9,000, and they used to be able to put temporary stands in there and get over 10,000 when Steve Alford was playing and his dad Sam was the coach. Not done. This could be the coolest thing since the end of one-class high school basketball in the tournament in that state. That happened in 1997 and is, I think, what we can all claim as the darkest year in the history of the past 200 years in that state. Eliminating one-class basketball was a terrible idea. Dr. Naismith, inventor of the game, Canadian, he invented basketball in Massachusetts. He said, quote, basketball really had its origin in Indiana, which remains the center of the sport. And Deadspin did a story on that about the state has developed more NBA players per capita than any place in the world. 6 million population in the Hoosier state, the crossroads of America. Right now, about 22 Hoosiers in the NBA. That's one for just about every 150 men in the state. And that doesn't even count what's happened over the last 50 years. Everybody knows about the Pacers. They're in the playoffs regularly. And you can go ahead and joke that they are in the playoffs and eliminated in the first round. I'm okay with that. But being in the playoffs is a good thing. The Fever won the WNBA championship in 2012. And based on Ari having that picture over his shoulder, we have to say Hoosiers is the best sports movie ever, ever, ever made. In fact, in that movie, guys, the Hoosiers fight song is actually Hail to Southport High from Southport High School, the Fighting Cards of Phil Van Horn.
I learn something new every day.
That's really true. They stole that and
how
used
big
it.
is the high school?
Southport High School now is just around 2,000 students, but they're, during the baby boom and everything, it went up, a couple hundred students nearly every year from about 70 to 77. And that's where, it was built for about 2,000 students. It had 5,000 students in it at one point. It's like going to a small college. You walk into a room and the desk, where the desk has a seat has the desk on it, they would be crammed together. And you'd literally sit, head to toe from someone in front of you. And it's easy to not pay attention to class, or maybe just easy for me to do that. But love Southport, great place to grow up. Indianapolis, wonderful place, family all there. I'm a Hoosier, and I just geeked out on basketball. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys talk for a little while about the Masters and some other things, because I'm going to take a break until we start talking about the NFL again. So, all right, why don't you grab the Masters and talk about that?
Yeah, so the Masters, if you missed last week's podcast, not really the Masters, but that trick shot hole-in-one during, practice was amazing. But, Dustin Johnson, dominant, never really trailed. Had the record low score, and it was on an ideal soggy course. So the lowest ever, the average score for the week was 71.75. Again, lowest ever, which breaks the record from last year. And, everyone playing had a chance. And, to quote the AP story, leading by 2 shots, heading into the Amen corner, the world's #1 player got through the 12th hole. That's where Tiger Woods earlier hit 3 balls in Rays Creek and made 10, and then ran off 3 straight birdies to pull away from the only players who had a chance. And then, there's Caddy Austin, the brother, the runner-up Cameron Smith was the first player in Masters history to post all 4 rounds in the 60s. And then, COVID was, they're not immune to COVID, and DJ did recently recover from COVID. So some exciting updates, up from the Masters. And then, talking about the NFL, today's Tuesday.
Ari, before we go on to the NFL, I think the best story I read, I think it was from Austin, talking about his brother, and he said his brother refused to look at the scoreboard during the last round. And it was only as he was walking up the fairway on 18 that he finally realized he was so far ahead of everyone else.
Well, good thing then he didn't look, since sometimes if you're far ahead, you could lax up a little bit and, let the lead kind of shrink a little bit, and then you can get yourself in trouble. But I didn't know that story. That's very cool.
And I'm curious to see what sports betting, when we get the numbers back from the results on sports betting from that, because not only were there straight up prop bets, but there was NFL and Masters parlay gone, and we'll probably get those numbers in about another week or two.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. My hunch is, the numbers go up for sports betting, but we'll see.
Andrew, you want to lead us through the beginning of NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually trying to find the Masters results from the sports books, but I mean, it was a wild weekend in the NFL, although it was a good one for the bettors, as I think all of the favored actually won. So worked out well for the bettors. There were some amazing games. The Cardinals Hail Mary with 2 seconds left to knock the Bills off. So really exciting weekend. And then some real tragedies. One of my favorite players, Drew Brees, is out with multiple rib fractures on both sides of his chest, collapsed lung. And it really changes the makeup of the offense for the New Orleans Saints, as he's being replaced by Winston and Taysom Hill. It's not the same. It's not the traditional passer anymore. So we'll see how that plays out. But the Saints were just rolling in the NFC. Yeah,
they look good. And then that brings us to one thing about the NFL. Andrew, you've got one thing. You go first, then Ari, you're second.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the Cardinals' amazing end, that Hail Mary play cost a bettor at William Hill $100,000. The bettor had put $2,000. You talked about these multi-sport parlays, $2,000 on a 16 parlay. He hit on Dustin Johnson in the Masters, Aryna Sabalenka over Mertens in WTA tennis, the Giants over the Eagles, the Buccaneers over the Panthers, the Steelers over the Bengals, and then missed on the Bills over the Cardinals.
Wow.
Brutal. 2 seconds left to lose that.
Mm-hmm.
Ari, one thing about the NFL.
Well, I'll always keep going back to the Bears, my home team. They started off so strong. I think it was 5-1, looking amazing, and then took a turn for the worse. Foles, it seemed like 2 minutes left in the game. I was watching it last night, Monday Night Football. Got hip possible shoulder injury, but the news today, not as severe as thought. So, we'll play, probably in 2 weeks. But so now they have a losing record, and there you have it. That's my two thoughts.
And mine, Kansas City and the Raiders rematch. This will be fun. Kansas City 12-3 against the Raiders since Andy Reid took over. That's dominant. But the last time they got together at KC, in the game this Sunday's in Las Vegas, the Raiders won the last one. They grounded out in October, although high-scoring game, 40-32. This coming Sunday, Kansas City is about a touchdown to 7.5-point favorite on the road. That's feeling a little heavy. The over-under is 54.5. Raiders have a 3-game winning streak, and they're doing it on the ground. All right, we go back to you. We have 2 developments in Major League Baseball. One is today, Theo steps aside from the Cubs. Also earlier, Kim Ng, the new leader of the front office of the Marlins, the general manager, Let's talk with Kim first. You've worked with her, right?
Yeah, I worked under both Kim and Theo. We'll talk about each, but yeah, with Kim, she was my boss, my contact when I consulted with the Dodgers. Although I had known her for over a decade beforehand. It's a small world, and good friends with Dan Evans, who's the GM of the Dodgers. I do sports management worldwide class in my spare time, and Dan is like the head of operations for that. But I've known Dan for a while, and he hired her when she was, just an intern in her first job. And then when he became GM of the Dodgers, brought her along as well. But Kim, arguably the most qualified non-GM as of a few days ago, having won multiple World Series. Although, to be honest, you could still be very worthy without winning it, but that certainly helps. But assistant GM for multiple decades with Dodgers, Yankees famously, and so on. And then, so two things. I'm personally happy for her. I've been a personal friend as well as a colleague. And, after 5 years of trying and not getting a dream, most people give up. And it's been 10 years, 15, 20 years, and more, but never really gave up, went to work for Major League Baseball commissioner. So the right person for the job. And then as a bonus, some people think it's the lead, but whatever it is, to be the first female, the highest ranking female in the history of, when I say professional sports, they call it like the male dominated sports, MLB, NBA, and so on, is a glass ceiling shattered. Phil, I know you've been in the industry. It's tough to break in. I'm friends with some of the reporters who were not allowed in the locker room, for being female, or not allowed on the plane, which has since been shattered. But having that first is great. It's a great inspiration, for everybody. Minorities, also Asian. So that's wonderful. But in and of itself, Kim is like incredibly qualified, working like when we work together, salary negotiations, arbitration hearings, contracts, scouting, player development, very, very in tune with the analytics, very naturally curious, great negotiator, great listener. How much time do we have left on the podcast? But, it in and of itself, it's a great thing to see. And the Marlins beat tremendous odds to make the playoffs and get through a little bit of the playoffs this year. Great young solid base, and she can help build that and lead the organization. It's going to be exciting. The Mets are on the way up too, so National League East is back in relevance.
That's wonderful. We mentioned that Theo steps aside, but most alarming to me, Andrew, is that Ari just mentioned that he has spare time.
I didn't realize that. Right.
Yeah, I think that's the big news of what he just said, is he has spare time. Guys, I'm going to jump to Hall of Fame. Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, the leading candidates are returning. It doesn't look like Clemens or Bonds are going to get to the finish line. Curt Schilling may well. He's certainly the most deserving, but he may not, because the voters hold against him a lot of, and did last year, a lot of his personal behavior. I want to talk about the guy that's newest on the ballot, Torii Hunter. Ari, you've seen this guy a lot, and Andrew, you grew up the Twins fan, and he really was the franchise there for a while, and deservedly so. A real gentleman. Torii played in the big leagues from age 22 to 40. And in that time, he amassed some really wonderful, eye-popping stats. 9 Gold Gloves, over 350 home runs, more than 2,400 hits. Now, 4 outfielders in the history of big league ball have those totals: 9 Gold Gloves, more than 350 home runs, and 2,400 hits. The other 3 are Junior Griffey, Willie Mays, and Al Kaline. Al Kaline is a tremendous hitter and started playing right away as early in his career. The 4th guy is Torii, and played in 5 All-Star games. Tremendous clubhouse guy. I don't know if he'll get there the first ballot, but he should get there. As Andrew, if you remember when Kirby Puckett, it's like Torrey just kind of fell right in line, and he's such a respected guy in the game, clubhouse guy, all those things. It'd be a natural to see him in Cooperstown.
Oh, absolutely. And I know he basically has always saw himself as a twin, as the man who took over center field for Kirby Puckett as Puckett moved out to right field and ultimately had that tragic end to his career. But yeah, I mean, and he fit in. He was the fan favorite. He was tremendous to that ball club, and he was tremendous everywhere he went.
Well, guys, that might wrap it up. We have two quick notes here before we say goodbye. One, Ivy League is dropping all winter sports, including men's and women's basketball. You'd think that would free up more time for studies, but several athletes are transferring or announcing intent to transfer instead of stay there and finish that coveted education. That'll be interesting to see what happens. And here's the tip of the week. A wealthy Chinese pigeon racing fan paid a record $1.9 million for Belgian-bred New Kim. And fellas, that's the bird of a different feather. Nearly $2 million for a bird. Tastes like chicken. Thanksgiving's around the corner, and none of that applies. $2 million. And that same individual owns the second most valuable breeding hen in pigeon racing. Guys, good week. Thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you doing the same. That's AAi Podcast on sports analytics. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. Bye-bye now.